You could be taking as many supplements as you want, and you could be doing the red lights and the cold plunge. But if you're not connecting with people and you don't have a community, it's moot. That is the number one predictor of living a long, happy, healthy life.
Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast. I am your host, Shawn David Nelson, the founder of Lovesac. Today's episode is so good. Oh my gosh. Let me tell you where it comes from. I find myself, even as a classic extrovert, kind of putting myself in a cocoon, AirPods. I'm tired. I travel a lot. I'm busy. Got lots of things going on. And I fall into bad habits where I'm going through life, not making connections, not being a real person, not proud of just the human I'm being on earth, and not learning. Even if I'm taking in reels and listening to books on the airplane or podcasts as I promote, I'm not really learning from the real world around me sometimes. And I have to push myself, and this is the Shawnism, to stay curious. And the way I do that is by developing some habits that we're going to talk about on this podcast around engaging with people in the real world, around connecting with people, life hacks to help us stay curious and grow. And you're going to get this on repeat from our amazing guest today, a world-renowned motivator, motivational speaker, author, Jennifer Cohen. We talk about not asking enough questions to people in the real world. We talk about why that's so important and how it develops real world relationships. How to focus on being interested, not just interesting. Everyone's favorite topic is themselves. We talk about tricks to get deeper truths out of people, starting conversations with statements, doing things that make us uncomfortable will help us grow, how disarming people can be to your advantage and how to do that. It's all in today's podcast. And by the way, we are doing something really special starting this week. Follow this podcast, on Apple Pods, Spotify, wherever you listen, YouTube. And in the comments, leave me a question. Anything you want to ask, anything you want Shawn David Nelson to comment on, to drop a little wisdom on, anything you're curious about Lovesac, anything you're curious about business, your own business, leave us a question in the comments of any of these platforms, and it will get answered on an episode that's coming in just a few weeks. So ask me anything, leave it in the comments, give it a like, give it a share, by the way, give it a rating. It's so helpful to me. I'd really appreciate that as a friend. And if you'd like, slide into my DMs on Insta and we'll connect there. But here we go with Stay Curious, Jennifer Cohen. On the show today, we have someone who is a true powerhouse, a best-selling author, entrepreneur, educator, motivational speaker, and one of the most dynamic voices in the world of self-development. She's coached everyone from Hollywood celebs to top-tier CEOs. But what really sets her apart is the mindset she brings to everything she does. And the Shawnism for today, stay curious. She is living proof that curiosity is not just a personality trait. It is a competitive advantage. Whether she's launching a business, writing a book, or diving into biohacking, she leads with questions, not just answers. And today, she's here to remind us that curiosity is the engine of growth, creativity, and reinvention. Please welcome to the show, the endlessly inquisitive, unapologetically bold, and always inspiring Jennifer Cohen.
Wow, thank you. What a nice intro.
Hey, if it wasn't all true, I wouldn't have said it.
Wow, well, that's really great. I mean, not only are you the CEO of my favorite sofa on the planet, but you do great introductions. So thank you.
Hey, I got two skills, couches and intros. Without giving it too much thought, when you heard today's Shawnism, stay curious, what's the first thing that came to mind?
I think I love talking about it because I think too many people aren't curious enough. And to me, it's the gateway drug or the gateway to anything of opportunity, success. And I think that if people can just dial up that curiosity knob a little bit, they would be shocked at what opportunities come their way.
Oh, I love it. How does one dial up their curiosity knob, Jennifer?
See, that's the problem, right? I think a lot of times people are interested in what they're interested in and don't ask enough questions to see what other possibilities are out there. And I think that becomes a thing, right? We have to be interested, not so interesting. And to me, anyway, I think we just become more curious by just asking more questions. That's the easiest possible way, right? And if you're not someone who's naturally inclined to do that, I think you kind of create like some type of like structure where you say, I'm going to ask some stranger 3 questions today, and like do it that way and see what kind of happens. And I think it's kind of one of these, like a ripple effect, right? Like I think once you start doing it, or cumulative, you become more and more, and you find out more, and that leads you down something, and then that thing leads to something else. It's kind of like that.
I love this. I mean, what good advice. And in fact, I want to build on that, because the idea of pushing yourself to just ask strangers questions, every time I get into an Uber or Lyft, which is really often actually, in the life I live, as much as I would love to sometimes sit in silence and just like take in some Instagram reels or something, chill out, I really try to ask that person questions, because to your point, it's crazy what you can learn. I cannot believe and this is just Uber drivers. I cannot believe the stories I've heard, the people I've met, some of the contacts I've made from riding in Ubers. Just as one dumb example, but you really have to kind of push yourself out of your shell. And by the way, it could be anything. Just ask them anything, the easiest thing, where are you from? And another benefit to this that I would just want to throw out there, because I've learned, you and I have probably read all the self-help books, or personal development. I'm a huge reader. I'm a huge follower of your content and content like it, constantly devouring, biohacks, health tips, life hacks, everything. There is nothing more endearing to people than talking about themselves, right? Like the best way to gain favor with anyone, and build a rapport, is to get them talking about themselves. And so beyond what can come of being curious, the social skill of asking people about them and allowing them to talk about them is an incredibly effective social skill.
Well, everyone's favorite topic is themselves, even if they pretend it's not. That's the first thing. The second thing is I find interesting is I've been doing a lot of speaking on the topic of what makes somebody likable.
Yeah.
Right. And the truth of the matter is, like, one of the things that make somebody very likable is giving the other person the opportunity to tell you about themselves. Right. And sometimes it doesn't have to be in the form of a question. Like sometimes when you ask a question, it can land in a way that just gets you that one answer, right? A lot of a strategy that I think is very effective is when you kind of just make a statement, right? Like whatever it is, or a conversation, and let the other person take it from there. It's like, an example could be, I don't know, I'm just going to think, but like you talk about Uber, right? Like, something like, oh, like, or something like, or I heard, or something more like Uber. I mean, you can meet so many people on Uber. Like, I hope that they treat you well. Like, I hope that you have a great, whatever compensation package from Uber, because you can be, you're in the car with all these randoms. Hopefully they're like taking care of you, that, you know what I mean? And they'll go, you think that, and they'll go into a whole thing that you would never know about. You get like I think you get the deeper truths when it's much more like kind of casual and suggestive versus obvious and straightforward. Does that make sense?
Of course. Yeah. I think developing tactics, developing self-awareness, whether it's asking questions, whether it's giving compliments,
That's a big one too.
you're right, saying something provocative to just get people talking, but having the volition to do it. I think it's easy sometimes for people looking in from the outside to see someone like you or like me, if I may, obviously extroverted to some degree. But some people have a really hard time being conversational, right? They're much more introverted. They haven't, they don't consider themselves talkers, what advice do you have for people who have a harder time engaging? Or by the way, I often just don't feel like it. I'm certainly capable of it, but I'm not, what advice do you have in the realm of staying curious for people who might not feel the same way?
That's true. I think a lot of it's like you don't feel like it. Like I think that, again, I don't expect or think that everybody should be out there super extroverted, and you can't make yourself a 10 out of 10 a curious person if you're just inherently not that person. But you can maybe make yourself go from a 2 to maybe a 5, right? With a little bit of like effort and help. So that's why I think when somebody is not necessarily naturally curious, when someone doesn't really give a shit one way or the other, right? Or they're uncomfortable with like the process of like even having a conversation, I think that's a very undervalued and underrated skill if you ever want to get somewhere in life. And I think that if you really want to be successful, you should really try to hone that skill even a little bit more than where you are. Get your baseline up. Now, to answer your question, I think the best way to do it is making like some kind of, give yourself a non-negotiable. Like I was saying earlier, like say, every day I'm going to find one person that I don't know, or I'm not, or I'm in a scenario or situation where I'm going to ask them a question, or I'm going to like start a conversation. And like with anything in life, the more you do something, the less uncomfortable it gets, and you become immune to the feeling of discomfort, right? Just how you could become immune to the feeling of failure if you fail all the time. Like me, yeah. That's my whole story, right? Like I failed so many times. I got so comfortable with the word no. What was another no for me, right? Like didn't matter. So it's the same thing with anything curious. It's like, if you're in an elevator, like that's a really good place because it's such a small space and everyone's looking at their phone and everyone's uncomfortable anyway. And maybe just make like an offhand comment, like, yeah, like isn't this cozy or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like say something where it can open up a dialogue. So if you are cognizant of the fact that you're not good at it, we make an effort, make an effort, like a cohesive effort to make yourself just a smidgen better at it. No one's good at everything, right? No one likes everything. But I think getting comfortable doing hard things and doing things that you don't like is a huge, valuable skill in itself.
Yeah. Even though it's not the focus of this episode, I'll just to build on what you're saying, because it's an area that I love to study, all the books on psychology, totally into it. As you said, it is so fascinating that there is nothing more endearing to people than when they talk to you about themselves. They leave that conversation perceiving like, oh my gosh, I just love that Jennifer.
True.
But not because you said anything necessarily, because they got to express themselves to you. And so it's a real skill. And on the flip side of that, I learned another way to endear people to you even more is by oversharing a bit. And what I mean by that is it's very easy for people to pass judgment. I don't like that guy, comes off smug. These are people talking about Shawn, don't like his hair, whatever. But when they start, if I volunteer information about myself at some point, like obviously I've let them talk about themselves. I volunteer information. Hey, I have 4 kids, 17, 15, 13, 11. All of a sudden I'm just anything. Talk about, I love to water ski. I love dirt bikes. Talk about yourself, even if you're not being asked. You don't have to hog the conversation, but you overshare personal information. It's very difficult for them not to develop empathy for you, because you become a real person. You become a multidimensional person. And so I find that also very interesting. So again, a bit off the core
No, I don't
topic,
think it.
but
I
fascinating.
didn't know. Do we have to talk about curiosity the whole time? Is
No,
that how
no, no,
your
no.
show
I
works?
just, no, no, no.
Well, no, because I was going to say, I think a lot of these are, this is actually really funny that we're talking about this, because I'm actually, I'm actually going to be doing another talk on this topic again, about all these things about what makes people the most likable. And what you're saying is disarming. You're
Yeah.
disarming people by giving them information and trying to make a connection with them.
Yeah.
Right. And by you saying you have 4 kids and you have a dirt bike, or, you're really bad at skiing, or whatever the hell you're saying, you are like disarming someone with information and trying to be a human being.
Yeah.
When we're really in a world right now where people are lonelier than they ever been. The number and the struggle is real. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but like, anxiety, depression, suicide, the rates of that have tripled in the last 10 years,
Yeah.
because of social media, because nobody's connecting to anybody anymore. And they're getting their dopamine hits from social, like from a like or whatever on Instagram, and no one's having connection. So the other thing why I believe curiosity is really important, and such a underutilized skill, and also, I guess, an underutilized talk, like people don't talk about it as much. I think it's underutilized because it actually, like, I believe it's how we get connected to people, right? Like, if you're a curious person, that's how we can actually help the loneliness, like that epidemic. I mean, or the lack of connection, the lack of dating. People are not dating anymore because they're not connecting. If you really kind of try to enhance your ability to be curious, all of those things actually become elevated, and it kind of, without even trying, helps you in all those other ways. It helps you to meet people, connect with people, in work, in personal, in everything, right? Like when we started this podcast, before we started, like, I love, of course, love sex. So I was asking you, I'm like, how did you start? Like, how many years ago was it? Like, I was genuinely interested, but like,
Sure.
I kind of now feel like we're kind of quasi friends,
Yeah,
because we have like a real conversation about stuff. Right now we're BFFs. You're going to give me a free couch.
Yeah, that's right. That's all I do. I run around, giving away free couches. But no, I agree. And in fact, look, I love to be tactical, meaning the spirit of the podcast, right? Let me save you 25 years. I don't know. We're all fellow citizens of the earth. We're all trying to be better people. In the spirit of your TEDx talk, in the spirit of getting away from screens, in the spirit of everything you just said about people's disconnection, I find myself roaming through airports, going through life, moving quickly. And I really push myself, even at those moments of checkout where I still have a human being. Pretty soon we probably won't. In fact, a lot of them are being automated. But to put my phone down, look the person in the eye, the stranger across from me that I'm going to, be there with for 9 seconds as I tap my card, and just make eye contact, and just, or say thank you, and not just be floating through life disconnected with my AirPods in everywhere I go. But it takes effort, and it takes like a conscious effort, even for something as little and dumb as that, because we have the ability to really cocoon ourselves these days.
I know, even things like this, like I don't love doing, like, I have a podcast too, obviously, but not obviously, but I do, but I don't love doing Zooms. Like I don't like doing Zoom or virtual podcasts even, because I think it always lacks the intimacy and connection that you get from just in real life. Right.
No doubt.
And in general, I think since COVID, everything has become, meetings are on like virtual, like no one's even doing phone calls anymore. It's all like virtual. No one's going and meeting at an office. It's all virtual. we've now created a world and a system that's all based around technology, right? We socialize through DMing people on social media and like doing it that way. We're meeting people with work on Zoom, where everything is technology, which kind of unfortunately, and we have too much information. We're over informationed, right? Like there's too much information. So like there lacks an ability sometimes to even be curious, right? Like when you have so much information thrown at you, you don't need to be curious. You just have to, you're so overwhelmed by every like so much stuff coming at you. The noise, you become kind of dulled to what's happening. So you have to work that much harder to actually go in real life, in real time, and kind of work that curiosity muscle more, right? To build true connections.
Yes, I love that. In fact, on the business side, so I agree. I mean, all things being equal, I would much prefer to sit there with you in LA,
Right.
or here in St. George, Utah, which is harder to get people.
I love Utah, by the way.
Well, next time you're in southern Utah, so I'm in like Red Rock countries, in Zion National Park backyard. But make sure you hit me up. But
I will.
Yeah, you gotta reach out. And by the way, so let's stay tactical. When I travel, if I have, I'm done with my meetings at whatever, I'm pushing myself to go through my phone. I've saved my contacts with, the state, like in your case, when you'll be saved with, Los Angeles. And because LA is too easy to not search up Los Angeles. And next time I'm in Los Angeles, if I have a spare whatever, I will seek out those people and I'll look to try to, hey, I'm here. Can we grab dinner? Can we do, push yourself to connect with real people, push yourself to break bread with real people. At Lovesac, on the company side, we systematize what we call connection weeks, where even though we've gone mostly remote corporate, and look, we have 400 plus corporate employees, 2,000 total. And even though we've gone full remote and stayed that way, and it's controversial in lots of respects, the only reason that we've been successful doing it is because we have these connection weeks where, we get together every quarter at least, and we're there in person, and it's a lot of travel, it's a lot of coordination, but we make that effort. Just yesterday, I had some people in from the East Coast, and I can obviously send them back after the task is done. We filmed a video, and they go to their hotel, but it's like, I feel so bad. So it's like, I want them to have an experience out here. So I pile them in my Ford Bronco. We drive out into the hills here in southern Utah and do a little off-roading. But I have to make the time to do that. And it's a choice. I can just as easily let them go do their thing at the hotel and move on with life. But we have to really push ourselves to be connected with people in the physical world, making eye contact, having conversations, staying curious about these people that we're ricocheting off of, because that's really what's happening. And then you wake up and, 50 years has passed, or take your pick. And, we've ricocheted through life, not making real connections. And we're really at risk for that in this society as it lies today.
That's a great word, ricocheting. That's kind of 100%, I think, what it is.
Yeah.
And I also think how you described how you're doing it with Lovesac is such a wonderful leadership quality, right? Like you're creating morale, like employee morale, in the best way possible, right? By getting people together to do things together, off-roading, whatever. There's such value in those things that have been kind of remiss recently. And the companies that I've seen flourish, the people I've seen flourish, have not gotten away from that. They're not becoming lazy in that, because it's so easy to become lazy in relying on technology and all these other things. And like you said, it's a huge effort to bring a lot of people together to interact, because also we as a generation, or as a society, I think have become lazy, because it's become part of our It's kind of part of how we operate now, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who don't even have to leave their house all day. They don't have to leave all week if they don't have to. They could Uber Eats all their groceries or whatever they do, or their food, and they could just they can work at home and just do Zoom meetings and whatever else. You don't have to do anything. You can just literally stay by yourself, alone, isolated, if you choose. And
Yeah.
and that's not even looked upon as bad anymore.
Right. Well, forget bad, whatever that means. You and I both know from all of our, the stuff we read and take in, that the most identified attribute of people that live the longest and the happiest comes back to connection, comes back to social connection, both 100%. For longevity and for happiness. I mean, what else is there? How else would you even define the word life? Either by longevity, my life, I'm going to live to whatever age, or by the quality of your life, babies, kids, pets, dogs, real life living. Both of those are determined by, in the end, your sociality. And so, heaven forbid we wake up after the life that you just described, Uber Eats, cocooned, maybe video games. And look, there's some little bit of sociality to happen. You could excuse that away. I'm wearing my headphones and I'm talking with someone in Thailand, beating them on Fortnite. But to your point, that is not the same. That is not the same. And so I think we really have to, just like we have to push ourselves to wake up, whatever we do, cold plunge, sauna, workout, all the things, we have to push ourselves to socialize and be curious about other people.
Yeah. And also, you're right. The other thing is, I was going to say, you can also people have now replaced like real connection with online connection, and they're getting their entertainment from just like scrolling on Reels and Instagram. And if we allow that to be what we do, it's very easy to do it. So I think it all starts from having that awareness and resetting your brain to what you want in the future versus what's easy for right now. Right.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of this, and by the way, with longevity, you could be taking as many supplements as you want, and you can be doing the red lights and the cold plunge. But if you're not connecting with people and you don't have a community, it's moot. Like that is the number one predictor of living a long, happy, healthy life. Number one. Right. If you don't have that, you will die quicker. I mean, that's why you see people who are very happily married. One person passes away very shortly after the other one does, right? That's it's what it is. So that's why, this idea of being curious, and if you're not curious, become better at it, is because that's kind of the seed where everything kind of grows, right? See, because like you were saying, I'm extrovert, I'm curious. Yes, because I am that way. Most of the things that's happened in my life, that like opportunities that happened in my life, it's because I made them happen. I didn't just sit by myself and manifest, like this is going to happen for me and visualize with my vision board. No, like I took major action with everything. And that was me being not just it started with curiosity, right? Because you have to you got to create relationships in a real, authentic way. And the best way to start those relationships is being interested in other people.
Yes.
And to be interested in other people, you have to ask questions. You have to make a conversation. You got to find ways to connect to whoever it is, and you get better over time. And then things blossom from there, right? Because to me, these are the stepping stones to everything else that comes after.
Yeah, I love it. And look, I would be remiss and probably a liar if I said I don't spend any time on devices, I don't do anything virtual. In fact, as I just described, we've now gone mostly virtual in my company, but we fight against it in the ways that I described. So to that end, I just want to throw out there, I think there are very healthy ways to use technology in the realm of staying curious, as long as we balance it with real world interaction and don't let it overtake us. And so, like, a couple of examples I'll share. I am guilty as charged. I love watching reels. I love learning. I mean, my feed, my algorithm, man, is just like this dialed in machine of like health and wellness, life hacks, history, tidbits, you know, politics, whatever. I'm constantly learning, and I think it's an incredibly cool way to learn. But I'm also, here's one, sharing with friends, pinging them with reels. And it's a kind of a cool way to stay in touch with people that are far away that I don't get to necessarily be with day to day.
Right.
But what it can't do is replace that relationship. Right.
So, listen, of course, none of us are, of course, we're all there. Those apps are designed to make us want to watch them. Believe me, I love watching TikTok. Like I love watching. And by the way, you know what I love about what I use social media for a lot? I find them, I love comedy. I see the funniest things, like the funniest memes on there, or the funniest comedians in their bits. Like I use it for the same reasons, for like fun, for social, for
entertainment,
entertainment. But there's a fine line. Like, I mean, this is where self-awareness becomes a thing, right? Like, and because you have to know, okay, like maybe 2 hours on TikTok is not going to be the greatest thing for my brain. Like maybe after 12, 15 minutes, you have to say goodbye. You got to put like timers on your phone and stuff, because we're all victim to this thing. And you're right. I think it's a great way to kind of also, if you're using social media as a way to connect to people by like sharing something that you like and you haven't spoken to someone for a while, that's a really great way to open up a conversation, right? Yeah. Is you sharing whatever it is that you like. But then what, right? Like you want to be able to then, in addition to that, also have life afterwards, right?
That's reach out when I'm in their town, still
exactly. I love that.
Yeah. And so look, life is tough. And I say this all the time on my podcast. That's why we're paid the big bucks. You're the CEO of your life. You're expected to manage it well, but it takes self-awareness. It takes self-control. All of these things require that. And so I think one other thing I'll just throw out there tactically, because I just love trying to be useful to people, is in the same vein, we can use technology in this cool way. When I'm in a town anywhere or doing something, anything, even if it's like an activity, a hike, Wikipedia that thing. Don't just pass through. Where was I yesterday? I was in North Carolina. Don't just pass through North Carolina, Hickory, looking at factories without let's Wikipedia Hickory, North Carolina. Let's find out where I am. Let's not just go drop into the factory and whatever. And so we can use technology to stay curious, stay connected, push ourselves mentally, push ourselves socially. But we have, there's, like you said, there's nothing wrong with maybe a little bit of dessert. There probably is something wrong with 7 desserts. There probably is something wrong with, 70 minutes of scrolling when it could have been something else, and maybe call your mom on the phone,
Yeah, on the phone. I think that's a good point, because curiosity can live in a lot of areas, right? You can be curious about a person. You can be also curious about different subjects and topics, or be curious just in life, where when you're use that muscle in a lot of different areas of life. Like the fact that you just said that is such a good, I think a great idea. Like if you're going to a different city, like North Carolina, like be curious about what's the best restaurant there. What's the best, what are they known for? Are they known for not a burrito, but are they known for like a taco salad, whatever it is? Like what's special about that place? And then take it to the next place and experience it, right? Because life is really also about experiences, like life experiences, right? It's one thing to read about something. It's another thing to actually experience it and live it, right? Living versus reading, right? You can read every self-help book in the world, but if you're not implementing and executing, it means nothing, right? So what I love about the idea of curiosity is it's about yes, take that moment to be curious, but then if you are in certain areas, then execute and act on it, right? That to me is like part two, a lot too, right?
Yes, I love that. And in fact, again, back to uh, self-control, pushing oneself, developing some discipline, and I get a personal tactical piece of advice I'll give you to executing and acting. Develop that muscle memory. So when I'm, in my case, I travel a lot, landing in a place, or in the Uber to wherever, that's where, if I'm not
We're really
chatting,
plugging Uber a lot. Maybe we
well,
should
I
talk
know it's
about
too bad.
Lyft
I
too.
spent so much of my life there. It's terrible. I know. I'm not even trying to plug. I hate Uber actually.
I'm
Um,
just kidding you.
no,
Yeah.
no. But develop the muscle memory to, let's say like I said, Wikipedia that place. Develop the muscle memory to, call your mom. Develop the muscle memory to call your spouse. Develop the muscle memory to connect with real people. Develop the muscle memory to, look up your friend in that place. Because otherwise it's so easy for us, and I'm using travel, but it could be anything, develop these habits, you're big on this. I know, develop these personal disciplines that can become muscle memory so that you don't have to necessarily rely so much on remembering to do some
Remember,
of these
or
things.
willpower. Like that's my whole message, right? Like my whole philosophy in life is creating daily or habits, routines, and rituals that keep you on point, right? To optimize, right? Because once something becomes habitual, it's much easier to make to kind of to keep it going. It's like exercise with anything, right? And if you can make it and like start small, like to me, if you're like again, becoming a little more curious, maybe make that your habit, right? Like by doing these like small things, by asking a question to some random stranger every day, or by when you are traveling, checking out the best restaurant and then executing and going, or finding out what's special about that place and experiencing it. Like I think that the muscle memory, I think it depends on who you are, and having the wherewithal to look like internally and be like, where am I lacking a little? Where can I improve? And I think that we have like a big life out there, and we're sometimes living small because we don't want to put in the effort, right? And if we can change that, reframe our brain a little bit, because everything that's worth anything requires effort. Everything requires effort. If you want to be fit and strong, you need to work at it, right? If you want, anything you want to be successful at requires work. There's no way around, it. There's no hack to make it easier, right? I don't believe in that, right?
Yeah, I agree. It all comes back to self-awareness and self-control at the fundamental level, and exercising your willpower. But I do think there's no way around that. But I have found that if I can develop these habits, like you say, that's the hack for me, right? If I can develop these habits that become, like, here's an example. It's uh, um, when I walk out of, like, say, a meeting, right? Because I do, I travel somewhere, I do this thing. I walk out of a long session. It is my habit to kind of reach in my pocket, pull out my phone, and call my wife. Because if I don't, I might go that entire day and, like, not even speak to her. Like, let's say when I'm traveling, because it just escapes me, right? I'm busy,
Right.
busy, busy, busy. But that's become such an important habit to develop. It's like my thumb will just do it.
Right. It's
And
so
it doesn't,
true.
and then it doesn't require me to be, quote unquote, a good husband.
Right.
Uh,
Because it's part of your date routine already.
that's right. But of course I love talking to my wife, but we have to develop these muscle memories in our life. And I think that I, I love how you characterized it, because staying curious, being curious about life, about who I am, where I am, what I'm doing, who I'm meeting, is such a gateway portal to connection, relationships, information,
Opportunity.
opportunity, happiness, even longevity. is that not worth developing a habit or two, a muscle memory or two that can keep us curious? And it's definitely that's why it's one of these let me save you 25 years Shawnisms. It's fundamental to a full life.
I will say I want to add something to that. You can also you can use one thing about Instagram, let's say, that has been really, you can use it to your advantage, to your benefit for curiosity, right? Because now we're just a few strokes away from being able to connect to anybody, right? So like what you did, for example, right? Like you're using it to reach out to people that you have interest in or you're curious about, and you're using you create a platform of some kind to get people that you want to talk to on the show, right? To me, like that's I think we should be using and taking advantage of the good part of what social media can provide, right? As opposed to allowing just the bad part of us just death scrolling and getting nothing from it, right? I think look, I didn't know who you were. I mean, I knew Lovesac. I love it. But you know who I am from something that you may have seen. And now look, we've become friends, right?
Absolutely.
Like, look,
absolutely.
And it all started from a little kernel of curiosity that started, right? Like, who knows? Like, where that can lead. Like, the one great thing that I think that social media and the world now being super big, it can allow people also, like if they take advantage of it and like reframe their brain to use it for what it's good for. Like I said, the opportunities, like the amount of amazing people that I met through my podcast because I was curious about them, invited them on my show, and the like ripple effect of what's happened on so many levels, like business wise, personal wise, everything wise, is incredible. And it all started because I was just curious,
I love what you said. This is the gateway to all of these good things, staying curious. So look, you need to follow Jennifer, as I do, on Twitter and Instagram at The Real Jen Cohen. Definitely check out her top rated podcast, like top of the top, Habits and Hustle, because it is amazing, packed with nothing but, advice like this, chopped into amazing reels on Instagram and every other TikTok, etc. So check that out. And for everything Jennifer Cohen, go to her website, jennifercohen.com. Check out her now how many millions, tens of millions of viewed TEDx talk, which is amazing. Teach you how to be a better parent. Look, thank you so much to the Wizard of Wellness, the high octane hustler, the curiosity queen herself, Ms. Jennifer Cohen.
Thank you. I love that too. A great outro also, I should say.
Well, remember, for everyone listening out there, stay curious, because for every success, there is a question that no one else thought to ask. And this may, like all the Shawnisms, just save you a chunk off your own 25-year journey. Thanks so much.
Once a year to take my friends away should not be the budget for your bike across America.
TikTok has become an aggregator for some of the dumbest human actions.
When I won that million, I was $2 million in debt, barely hanging on.
Hey, don't stop the podcast yet. If you loved this episode, please give it a review. Please give it a star rating. And we're doing a special episode coming up. So besides your 5-star review, I would love to hear from you in the review section of this podcast, wherever you're listening, Apple Pods, Spotify, even YouTube. In those reviews or comments, ask me a question. Anything you want me to comment on, anything you want me to opine on, anything you want me to wrap a Shawnism around, ask me a question. We're doing an Ask Me Anything episode. It's coming up, and I would love your question to make it. If you dare, leave us your name so that we can give you a good call out. Tag it with a handle if you want. But I would love you to ask me anything in the reviews of this show. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Shawn of Lovesack. That's where I post inspiration, podcast highlights, real moments from my life and my family. I would love to stay in touch with you there. You're welcome to slide into my DMs. Let's hang out. You can find me on all the social media platforms. And I very much appreciate you spending time with me on the Let Me Save You 25 Years pod today.